welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those of you who haven't seen this before, this is where I take 10 questions from the subscribers that are part of our community. The subscribers are the subset of the overall community and people that have backed the game that contribute extra money every month to allow us to do a whole bunch more of enhanced community interaction and content. So a lot of the stuff that we do, like Jump Point, which is this 50 to 70 page magazine that we publish monthly that has sort of in-depth behind the scenes articles and pieces on how we design our ships and parts of lore and stories from the universe. Around the Verse, which is our sort of weekly sort of update news show. This 10 for the Chairman, some of the smaller pieces we do like Bug Smashers. New thing that I did the other week called Game Commander, which was actually quite fun. Thank you very much for the subscribers out there, because without your contributions we wouldn't be able to invest as much into the community interaction and content that we do. And I think that's one of the things that sets Star Citizen apart, because it's not just about building a fixed single game. It's about we're building a universe, and we're kind of building a universe together. And one of the fun things is sharing and talking about it as we're in the process of doing it. So thank you very much to the subscribers for allowing us to be doing this kind of stuff. So we're all pretty busy here. We're working very hard, getting ready for Gamescom, which is later on this week. Hopefully you guys are going to like some of the stuff we show you. We're definitely going to be showing some of the foundational stuff that will make a lot of the things everyone's wanted to do possible. It's still got rough edges and all the rest of the stuff, but I'm super excited when we're running through a bunch of the stuff that we're doing on the little level that we have here, the large world space or area. So it's pretty cool. So I'm kind of excited to show you guys it. In the meantime, let's get to the 10 questions that you guys have asked. So the first one comes from Oberst, who asks, how have you been dealing with getting back into game programming after a break that lasted a decade? Have there been a lot of hurdles going from DirectX 8 era, where games had rudimentary physics at best, straight into development of a high-end multiplayer game from the DirectX 11/12 era? Well, it's actually been fun. I mean, just I think some of you out there know that in the early days when we showed the prototype, and this was back in October of 2012, I was pretty much the programmer. So I had coded most of the stuff that we'd shown. I'd done a bunch of changes to CryEngine itself to enable us to do some of that stuff. I'd had some help from a few people like Paul Rendell, who now works with us, who was at the time at Crytek and part of the sort of support department they had there in terms of software engineers that supported the SDK, that worked on that SDK, and then worked with outside people like myself. I did most of the coding. Luckily, no one's really migrated in sort of high-end game coding to a new language. So C++ was something actually back in the early days. I think that was probably one of the early adopters of C++. I wrote Wing Commander in C, and then for Strike Commander, which the engine that we wrote for Strike Commander was the foundation of the 3D engine that ran most of the Origin games after that. All the stuff that we did for the later Wing Commanders, a lot of Warren stuff, so sort of things like Wings of Glory, Pacific Strike, and some of the stuff that Andy Hollis did was originally all based on the engine that we first built for Strike Commander. And so that was the first project that I did in C++. We built pretty, I think, for the time, if you look back on what we did, we had a whole bunch of firsts in the graphics world. I know that a lot of credit goes to id for having invented 3D, but really there was quite a lot of 3D before it ever got around to doing proper 3D. Paul Neurath, who recently has just had Underworld Kickstarter, was successfully funded. He's working on, had done some pretty awesome 3D stuff. Sid Meier had done some with F-19, and of course with Strike Commander, we were the first one to do proper real-time 3D road shading and real-time texture mapping. And if you actually go back and look at Strike Commander, you can actually see that we had virtual cockpits all the way back in 91, 92, which is pretty cool. But that was the first project we used. I did C++. For whatever reason, I always liked the brand new shiny stuff, try out the new tech. And so, there was, back then we worked with Ball and C, and, C++ came out, and so me and Jason Templeman, who was the programmer, the sort of lead programmer that working with me, we sort of got in, dived in, and sort of learned C++ as we went along, and I quite like it. I found it sort of works well for the way I sort of think and organize things, and so people still use C++ all these years later. So when I first got back into doing Star Citizen, it wasn't really that different. There's newer functions, so like some of the latest stuff like the STL stuff and the boost stuff is all newer parts of the lexicon of C++ and various stuff you do. So there's a little bit of that, but the fundamentals are the same, and so it was kind of like riding a bike, and it was actually kind of fun because it's one of the few areas that you can sort of control what you're working on, and you can make things happen, and so it's actually quite empowering and fulfilling when you say, okay, I've got an idea of something that I want to see happen, and you go and you program it, and then you actually see it happen that way and simulate that way on the computer that you're working on. It's great. So I had a lot of fun. Obviously I have a physics background from a long time ago, and so that obviously helps. And to be honest with you, the tools you have now on modern engines are fantastic. I mean, compared to what we had in the old days, where we had to do everything from scratch, write our own editors and everything else, just starting out of the box with something as powerful as CryEngine was great. So it's a lot of the same concepts. You just can do a lot more of it, a lot more powerful, and it's fun. So I don't really feel like I kind of the old guy that doesn't know how to do the stuff, but I definitely think my background helped me, because there's definitely some stuff that we're doing in Star Citizen that I think is really pushing things, and it's cool. So I'm having a lot of fun, actually. I wish I could be doing more programming and than some of the other stuff that I have to do, but that's not always the case on a big project and having to direct and communicate to so many people. All right, there you go. That's a fairly short answer for you. Next question comes from Matrix, which has comma definition of awesome. I don't know if that's all one word, but there you go. Who asks, how is the NPC population expected to function within the PU? Will all the NPCs, 90% of PU population, which I think what that's referring to is the fact that I commonly say that of the overall population of the persistent universe, it will be about 10% players and about 90% NPCs. Exist within the universe constantly with their movements and actions tracked in a limited fashion? Will they be randomly generated as players enter instances, zones? How will this calculate into the economy and mission system? We actually have a full universe simulation that runs on, we actually don't need it to run on like any particular bank of servers. It just actually really runs on one server, and it simulates about 20 million AI agents, and it simulates the AI agents in a very sort of high-level manner. It's like, okay, you've got a mission, you're going to go from here to here. So it's not simulating it on the fidelity level that you would do when you're actually connected to the game and flying around and doing combat maneuvers or flying from point to point. It's sort of simulating it more in the, here's the jobs, here's the missions, here's the market demand, here's the things that are happening. Okay, yeah, you've taken a mission to take these goods from planet A to planet B. All right, so you've now taken that job off the market. Now you're going to go from planet A to planet B. So that's really just sort of a kind of a line trace. That trip's going to take, whatever it would be, a day of game time. And then along the way, there's a chance that you could fight or run into some pirates. And if they do, we will resolve that combat. If you're not there, kind of more like a dice roll. But if you are there or in the area and this all gets sort of created or spawned in where you are, you will see the result. The actual combat will then end up getting spawned in, and then you'll see it play out, and the results of it will be fed back to the universe sort of server simulation. So the universe simulation keeps track of all the NPCs. It's the one that's dealing with the goods and the markets, the economy nodes. So on various planets, there'll be things that produce, things that consume. So there's sort of a very sort of high-level meta AI that's running on the economy simulation, and from that high-level simulation, we can track the sort of movement, the populations, the progress of AI in a sort of much higher level abstracted way. And of course, since that doesn't need to be real time like you flying around, we can time slice it, which is why we can simulate so many agents. So we're not having to do 20 million agents at 30 frames a second at all. So you can update every single agent maybe every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, and that's how you can manage so many of them, because in the time scale that the universe simulation happens, it doesn't need to be the same sort of fidelity that we do on the game server, that's the one where you, like in Arena Commander now, if you connect and you dogfight with someone, the game server is what's sort of running you and the other clients running, and it's worrying about simulating where the bullets are and all the ins and outs of the high fidelity of the flight and the combat. So essentially, the NPC population is mostly simulated. I think that on some level we don't necessarily simulate every individual person on the planet. So like a planet would say, okay, here's your general population, and that general population, when missions have to happen, could spawn a certain number of bounty hunters or a certain number of traders or haulers or cargo folks, and then they will take their missions and then that particular ship. So we sort of simulate the ships and the missions that are happening on an individual basis, and then when you're on the planet, then there'll be a sort of setup of here's the population going up and down. Is it things going well on the planet? Then if so, more people are arriving there, population's getting bigger, it's expanding. Things aren't doing so well, it would be the converse one. But it's a pretty decent high-level simulation, and then that information is then fed to the system servers and the game servers, and that sort of will help determine when you're flying around whether or not you will encounter NPCs or not, and whether or not those NPCs are fighting each other in conflict and what's happening. So one of the cool things is we'll have a living, breathing world happening irrelevant of how many actual players are playing. So there could be only one person playing in the Star Citizen universe. I mean, I hope to God not. But if there was, there would still be a living, breathing universe, people going about their daily lives, trading, being pirates, being bounty hunters, being miners, all of that sort of stuff. So I think when that all sort of comes online and comes together, I think it'll be very cool. I mean, we currently have the sort of the universe simulation happening on its server, and where we have an interface where there's the communication of kind of what you would, this is the kind of thing you would see if you're in this area, and that's all in progress. So I think it'll work quite well. So. All right, next question is from, in bracket, square brackets, TAC, T-A-C, Buzz Killer. Okay, so hopefully the question's not a buzz kill. Now that the Squadron 42 shoot is in the can, how will our characters communicate during the campaign? Will we have a selection of voices we can choose from? Will we only speak through text? Or will we just be a silent protagonist as in the original Saints Row and the early Grand Theft Auto games? No, you will definitely not be a silent protagonist. So we shot the whole Squadron 42 with someone playing the player, and we recorded their voice and we recorded what their face is doing. We have plans because you can choose who you're going to be. You can choose whether you're a male or a female. You can actually choose what you look like. So we have a whole bunch of base heads or faces that you can sort of choose and blend between, and so you can sort of customize your look to how you want to look, whether you're male or female. And then we are going to do additional voice work beyond the default player character that we recorded. We'll do a female player character, and I'm also toying with the idea of having some localized accents. So imagine if you were playing the game and you got an English IP address, and we use the English voice pack for the player instead of the American voice pack if you're in America. So don't know about that, but that's kind of that's one of the ideas, and I think it would be pretty cool to sort of personalize it. And of course, if we do that, you would be able to choose if you wanted to have an English accent when you're in America, or an Australian accent, or whatever it would be. But you'll definitely hear yourself speak and think. And if you cut out to a third-person view, you would be able to see your face. And we captured the player's face in the same sort of fidelity that we've been doing all the other actors. So it's going to be pretty awesome. So there you go. All right, next question comes from the Snowed One, who says, what have you liked and not liked so far in regards to community-generated content? What would you like to see or see more of the general community creating for Star Citizen? Well, to be honest with you, I don't really think I've seen anything I haven't liked. I'm pretty impressed by the amount of stuff that everyone does. So the level of like fiction that people write, things like doing their own comic strips, the sort of machinima stuff that's been pretty awesome. I mean, there's some really great stuff that various people out there have been doing. Doing videos, showing off the game, showing off features. That's all super cool. It's really cool, seeing people build their own 3D printed ships of our ships. It's very cool. People building their own sort of spaceship models and whether like components of guns. And the next great starship was something that we tried to highlight a while ago, and I'd like to try to get back to. But I'm just constantly floored by the sort of investment the community has in sort of building the world up. I mean, that's always the things I like the best, where it's all the sort of in fiction stuff. So we get great recruitment posters for the UE Navy and all that kind of stuff is super, super cool. I will say that long-term goal is to actually have more, try and get some tools in there for some of the community-generated content, because right now it's really the people that kind of know CryEngine and they know how to strip the assets out of our builds and they use it. And there was a group of the modders already built their own version of a pirate swarm, which was pretty cool. But what I'd like to do is have proper tools. So a longer term thing would be to sort of provide some tools to allow people to do some of that inside the game in a more formal setting. Obviously, that's certain things we need to get out first, but that's actually something that I'm pretty keen on, because I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of creativity out there, and it's hard work for us to keep up with how much everyone out there wants to consume stuff. So it would be fun and helpful to have some of you guys out there being able to also generate some stuff that people can enjoy and play. So that will be a sort of longer term focus for us. So I guess check back for more updates on that in the future. All right. Next question comes from Holo-san Voidrax, who asks, how will the Multicrew system handle ship inertia? Will the local physics grid add forces to the procedural animation depending on the character's position in the ship? Acceleration vectors, centrifugal force, etc. That is something that we are definitely going to simulate long term. The very first iteration of the Multicrew ship setup probably won't have that the way I want it at the moment. So I have a plan that when like Star Trek style, if you get hit, everyone can stagger like this, or you have to in the bigger ship take a big turn. People would move and have some force that way. And so there is some of the stuff that we've been doing, which is directly related to what we're doing for the zero-G stuff and the grab and pull stuff, that will allow the systems to do that, where we can cycle through, like if a ship gets a hit on the side and it's a big hit, we can cycle through all the players or characters inside the ship and anything that's loose, and apply an impulse to all them the same way the impulse would be hitting the ship that you're inside, and then they should procedurally all react to that. I mean, there's already some stuff that's in the CryEngine that we're working with, like procedural hit reactions. It's kind of like that side, but I would love it to be, or you have that Star Trek stagger and someone reaches out and braces themselves on the bulkhead. So we're definitely going to be putting that in. First draft of the Multicrew probably won't, because that's sort of that extra level of sort of animation and simulation detail, but that's definitely going to be going in, not hopefully too far after just the base of the Multicrew, because I think that'll sort of give a real sense of like the speed and inertia and what's happening on the ship. So if you fly it normally and you're not doing crazy evasive maneuvers, it's all fine. But the moment you have to do a crazy evasive maneuver, then people get thrown around a little bit, just the same way you see in a classic, say, sub-movie. So that'll be super cool. All right, next question comes from Scout, who asks, hi Chris, Multicrew is the most appealing part of Star Citizen gameplay for me. A somewhat obscure game called Artemis has done a great job of this by granting each member of the ship's crew an interesting and involving role, and at the same time making them very reliant on the input from their shipmates. How does Star Citizen plan to implement Multicrew in a compelling way? Well, I think that the answer is pretty much the same way. I mean, we're looking at various different stations and seats around the Multicrew ships. We'll show off some of it in a limited fashion in Gamescom. But you're going to have your helm, and you're going to have your sort of radar scanning. You're going to have your engineering section. Obviously, people in things like turrets to protect, and we're going to have specific gameplay that's there. So when you're working with your other shipmates manning the ship, whether it's sort of tracking things, protecting the ship, fixing things, balancing shields, like those a whole separate sort of shield station that we have for the Multicrew. So essentially, if you and your friends are working together, will allow you to do a lot more, you know, basically control all the things with more sort of fidelity. Because you know, if you're flying a ship by yourself, doing things like, you know, adjusting your power, adjusting your shields while aiming, while flying, while adjusting your throttle, you know, it's a lot of things all to do at once. And so if that gets distributed between different crew members on a multi-crew ship, you may be able to do all those more effectively. So we're definitely building it that way. There will be, you know, short-term chat, but long-term we're looking for VoIP between the different players, so you can be talking to your friends. In the short term, I'm pretty sure everyone will be using TeamSpeak and stuff like that. But yeah, you know, if you've seen those sort of Starship simulators, there's a few of them out there. You know, we will have similar gameplay, although it will be, you know, real time at a much higher fidelity, and be pretty cool. Okay, I have a sip of water and next question. Next question comes from Colonel Shaggy, who asks, will Squadron 42 have any difficulty settings for people like me who quite frankly suck at dogfighting, but still want to check out the story? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some level of difficulty setting, you know, the usual easy, hard, insane kind of stuff. To be honest with you, I haven't really like figured out the variations of the mode, but usually they normally involve around, you know, quite how accurate or tough the AI are. So we'll have a easier mode, although I don't want to make it too easy, because I sort of feel like modern games have gotten away from what made games in the old days sort of work. Because I sort of, if nothing is a challenge to achieve, then there's no satisfaction from finishing it. So, you know, that was one of the things that I really sort of appreciated with Demon's Souls when I played it quite a few years ago. It was like, I remember, because I've been playing all these games that were sort of the typical first person or the cover shooters, and you die, you respawn within 2 seconds of where you died, so there was no penalty for messing up or not doing stuff right. And Demon's Souls definitely was a penalty, very frustrating at times, but it kept me playing. And when I finished a level, killed the boss, I was very proud of myself. And you know, that's one of the few games that I played to completion and then again. So that's saying a lot for me, and I definitely put a lot of time into it. So I'm not necessarily saying it will be as hard as Demon's Souls, but I definitely want it to be like the Wing Commanders, where you had to complete your mission before you went on. You couldn't sort of go save every 2 steps, which you can in some of the modern games, because I kind of feel like, you know, you don't want it to be a fully nanny state where you're just always going to take care of people. So you need to run this balance between not being too frustrating, but also being challenging enough that you're happy and satisfied when you do it. So we'll probably have, you know, a mode to make things easier, but there still will be, you'll still have to finish things to move on, progress on to the next level. So there you go. All right, next question comes from Moose, who asks, will there be floating debris fields of scrap metal for salvagers akin to asteroid fields? Will salvage opportunities only be spun up after particular battles, or both? Will there be a salvage deep dive document in the future? So there'll definitely be debris fields that you can salvage, and there'll be sort of some that will be just seeded out there, similar to asteroid fields, that, you know, maybe is sort of a space battle from long ago, and you know, maybe there's some cool derelict stuff there that you can go and find or salvage. And then there will definitely be the opportunity after space battles happen, if you come across it or you're there on the edges, you can recover a bunch of sort of the salvage scrap items then. So those are all sort of pretty specific and focused gameplay that we want to do for the salvaging, and I think, you know, it will be pretty cool for the Reclaimer. And will there be a salvage deep dive document in the future? Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask Tony that. So the salvage is sort of on Tony's plate, but he's, you know, if you've read his stuff or heard him talk, deep dive is, he doesn't know how to do anything but a deep dive. So there very may well could be about salvage in the future. I mean, we generally want to have sort of design overview of sort of the main sort of roles and game features that you can do in the game. So I would say, yep, in the future. Can't promise that it'll be in the next month or 2, but that's definitely something that we would want to do. I would think we would probably have that kind of document when we first debuted the Reclaimer for people to actually like use in Big World. Okay, next question comes from Aragorn BH, who says, hello Chris, CIG has said in the past that ships will require maintenance due to deterioration. Does this mean that the ships in my hangar will degrade due to time even if they are not being flown? or does this only happen when they are actively being used? Also, does this phenomenon apply to handheld weapons, clothes, space helmets, shipping containers, decorative hangar objects, etc.? So yes, ships will require maintenance. We're going to try and have them the same way they are in the real world, that you have to maintain them, you have to sort of keep them in good working order. But that will be mostly due to operational. So if you keep them in your hangar, where other than the fact that you may keep something in your hangar for a couple of years and now it's an outdated model, we're not really going to have it deteriorate them. But if you're taking it out on missions, it's flying stuff, it's getting inside combat, then it will have some level of sort of deterioration. We've got a whole sort of blend layer set up for wear and tear. So over time, you'll start to see more wear and tear, and then you can bring it into a repair shop or so on, and pay them some credits, and they will sort of buff it back out to new, maybe not 100% new, but fairly close to it, and go with that. And that will also apply to using hand weapons, clothes. You as a character, everything will sort of age with use. All right, last question from Voodoo, who says, now that CryEngine 3.8.1 is out and finally supports Linux and OpenGL, we'll be lucky enough to see a Linux client in the not too distant future. Yes, CryEngine 3.8.2 is out actually as of the other day. We would very much want to make Linux work. I think there's some issues in the OpenGL side of things because we've done some work and customization on the graphics drivers and the shaders. So that would probably need some support. We already compile the game in Linux because all our servers run Linux, so we compile CryEngine in the Linux. But yeah, I would like to have a Linux client, and it really depends on the timeline of getting OpenGL, the OpenGL implementation they have on the CryEngine, and making sure it supports the extra additions we've done inside Star Citizen. So that's really down on our graphics and engine department. They're pretty busy right now, working on some stuff that I think a lot of people kind of would be excited to see. And one of them is obviously DX12. So I don't think that I can say this is going to happen in the next month or two, but it's definitely something we would want to do. We want to support. OpenGL is something we're interested in, as well as DX12 and stuff like that. So I would say in the not too distant but not too close future. How about that? All right, that is the end of the 10 questions. Thank you for listening. As always, thank you to subscribers for enabling us to be able to do this, and thank you to everyone that's backed the game out there for backing and believing and enabling us to build a game of such unbridled ambition. And I'm looking forward to seeing those of you that are going to come visit us in Gamescom at the event we're doing on the Friday. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys. I'm sure I'll be seeing people that I've been seeing at all the Gamescom events, which is great. It's like good old friends. And also for the people that can't make it, I think we're going to live stream it, so that'll be fun. So be sure to sort of tune in for that. I think we've managed to get faster internet at the actual venue this time. I mean, generally our live stream problems haven't necessarily been because we don't know how to live stream. It's mostly because we go to these venues and they tell us that the internet is a certain speed, and then we get there and it turns out the internet is 1/10 of the speed, and a lot of the live streaming hardware just basically blows up when it doesn't have enough throughput. So we've, I think, paid extra money to upgrade it again. We've been promised that it's good. I think we'll test it out before we're there. Hopefully it will hold up, unlike some of the other venues we've been at, and we'll be able to stream the event. And anyway, and hopefully you guys will like it. So I probably won't have one of these for the following week because I'll be over in Europe and doing the Gamescom stuff. But I'll pick it up as soon as I'm back in LA. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching 10 for the Chairman. If you guys would like to see more episodes, go here. If you guys would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and always keep up to date with all our video content, go here. And if you guys would like to watch episodes of Around the Verse, go here, please. And I will see you in the verse.